Now, it's no commonly held secret that the mysterious and all-powerful fictional organization known only as the SCP Foundation harbors some pretty terrifying monstrous entities that would make any modern horror monster quake in their boots. But you know what's worse than any one of these nightmare-inducing creations? An entire species worth of them. Let me introduce you to SCP-939, a lesser-known anomalous creature that has maintained a campaign of terror for decades, waging a secret war of blood-based cacophony while slowly unpicking the very foundation of those that contain it. Yeah. Hold on to your hats for this one. Hello internet, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. As per usual, I'll be your disembodied floating voice, Jack Finch, as today we curiously ask the question, what if SCP-939 was real? Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that clip was from 2018's Annihilation, directed by Alex Garland and based off the book of the same name by Jeff Vandermeer. And strangely enough, despite the creature being more bear-like than canine-like, it's actually a frighteningly vivid visual depiction of just exactly how and what these creatures would appear as. And even more accurate is the fact that the bear in Annihilation functions in the exact same manner that SCP-939 does, as in it can mimic the human voice and use it to lure its prey toward it. Yeah, it's probably best that I mention that, isn't it? Oh, and also, these guys are nicknamed with many voices. I told you it was going to be a spooky one, didn't I? As the record states, SCP-939 are a species of endothermic pack-based predators which display an atrophy of various systems similar to that of troglodytic organisms. Essentially, they're ugly as all hell and are really good at living in the dark and not dying. The skins of these creatures are highly permeable to moisture and appear as a translucent red, owing to a chemical compound similar to that of hemoglobin. Again, essentially, they're ugly as all hell and are, physically speaking, highly mobile sacks of blood. Gross. But also 10 points for creativity. Strangely enough though, despite being vastly comprised of blood, the species of SCP-939 possess nearly zero vital organ systems. Its central and peripheral nervous systems, its circulatory system, and its entire digestive tract are all terrifyingly absent. In fact, for a pack-based predator whose prime directive is to hunt and are evolutionarily adapted solely for that purpose, these creatures have no way to even digest their prey. And if you think that's weird, it doesn't end there though, because it's even hypothesized that SCP-939 have no apparent physiological need to feed. And it poses the question, what the hell has evolution been up to create these literal hellhounds that vomit up the carcasses of their enemies because they don't have room in their bodies for such a thing? That's disgusting and also just incredibly wasteful. And if that isn't already weird enough, guess what? Despite the absence of pretty much all of its vital organ systems, the species of SCP-939 are entirely capable of bearing live young. Of course they are. As if they couldn't get any more biologically messed up. So forget everything you thought about defeating these things easily, because they can breed at a staggering efficiency like a horrifying warren of blood-based rabbits that want nothing more than to tear your face off and then mimic your horrifying screams to lure other humans to their demise. What the hell, guys? What the hell? In fact, if the species of 939 were real, then it's a very real possibility that the historical course of our civilization may have been horrifyingly altered by the efficiency of these nightmarish predators. Remember when I said that these creatures were capable of bearing live young? Wow, yeah, their offspring aren't exactly as you might imagine them though. The young that they give life to, or unlife maybe, are identical to that of a human child. Sorry, what? Yeah, you heard that correctly. SCP-939 give birth to a pretty much unmistakable copy of a regular human baby, although as you may imagine, things don't exactly end up in any kind of fairy tale ending. As several pretty horrific records state, during its infancy, the young of SCP-939 will exhibit the identical characteristics and actions of a human baby. However, as you may expect, after a certain amount of time, things soon resume their horrifying course of evolutionary action, and its young begins tearing off its own flesh, rips off its own head, and then emerges as a near identical 939 species, albeit considerably smaller than that of a full-size creature. What? Now imagine the implications of that though. You see, it's heavily referenced in the Foundation's records that a large multitude of dens of these creatures have been discovered on pretty much every continent on Earth. If they were real, imagine a primitive human society discovering one of 939's offspring out in the wilderness, thinking it to be a harmless, defenseless child in need of shelter, and taking it back to their small village to be raised as one of their own. Well, obviously, as you can imagine, things would have swiftly become a blood-soaked nightmare, but the thing is, SCP-939 actually has another anomalous trick lurking up its species' sleeves. Because if it wasn't already enough of an efficient nightmare-stalking predator, 939 also secretes an aerosol amnestic substance from its jaws. So not only is it perfect at stalking, hunting, and destroying its prey, anyone who survives an assault from 939, i.e. say in a small remote village, also can't even remember how or why their entire village has been destroyed in a bloodbath of carnage. How do you even begin to combat such a creature? And when we hypothetically apply it to ancient society, as it's widely accepted that SCP-939 have been lurking on our planet for thousands upon thousands of years, and without the technological advantages of a capable institution such as the SCP Foundation, then it's safe to assume that humanity would have struggled to emerge out of the Dark Ages. Forget the big bad wolf, forget Grendel, hell, even forget dragons. SCP-939 is the nightmare-ridden apex predator of humanity that uses fear itself as its weapon to lay its blood-soaked tendrils deep into society and sow its seeds of terror. Yeah, guys, if you couldn't tell already, SCP-939 is almost too good at being a horrifying anomalous entity. Well, if that's the case, then let's thank our lucky stars that we've got some pretty hefty plot armor, and these guys are just fictional. Right? Right? Well, there we have it, folks, the way that we see things going. If SCP-939 was real, it wouldn't be great, to say the least. What's going on, guys? As always, I'll be your host, Jack Finch, as we boot up the archives once again, demonstrate our authority as an O5 official, and curiously ask the question, what if SCP-173 was real? Fun fact, actually, because many people commonly think that SCP-173 was ripped off from Doctor Who's Weeping Angels, first aired on the 9th of June 2007, but in fact, SCP-173 was the first ever skip created on the X boards of 4chan and predated Doctor Who's episode by several months. In fact, it spawned the entire SCP canon and is the reason that we're even here discussing the possibilities of a terrifying fictional scenario and the consequences of a containment breach. Coincidence? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but the Blink episode actually gave us quite a credible insight into our hypothetical scenario, so let's learn a thing or two. Before we jump into that though, you know the drill by now, guys. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, or just LBQ in general. Then be a dear and hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest questioning uploads. On with the show. So what exactly is SCP-173, you may ask? Is it a hulking space beast summoned through a keyhole? Is it an indestructible hateful lizard that just can't die? Well, no, it's a statue, really, but sometimes the fear of the uncanny is far more terrifying than you think. SCP-173 is a Euclid-class object of unknown origin and is interestingly classified as usually a skip of such destructive hostility would be Keter class, but the difference here is the ease of its containment. It's a relatively easy process to deal with Euclid-class objects and shut away within their containment procedures. Or is it? 173 is a statue-like object constructed from concrete and rebar, with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. In other words, it wouldn't look out of place in a graffiti exhibition. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile, despite appearances that may indicate otherwise. The object cannot move while within a direct line of sight, and thusly, line of sight must not be broken at any time with the object. This is incredibly important. The Foundation's containment procedure is actually pretty straightforward and is essentially seal it in a box and hope for the best. The object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull, or in more rare circumstances by means of strangulation. In the event of an attack, personnel are to observe Class 4 hazardous object containment procedures. You know those ones. SCP-173 regularly secretes a strange reddish-brown substance in the area around it, which is commonly believed to be a combination of feces and blood. The origin of these materials are unknown, but by orders of the Foundation, enclosure must be cleaned on a bi-weekly basis to keep the reddish-brown substance from building up. It is a commonly held belief in the Foundation that this substance are the beginnings of a second spawn of SCP-173 in an intentional attempt to replicate itself. Personnel who are assigned to the container on a cleaning duty are instructed to alert one another before blinking in an effort to constantly maintain a field of vision and thus negate the skip's line of attack. But, well, actually, we're lying to you, dear listeners, because special containment procedures for SCP-173 aren't as straightforward as we initially described. In fact, as recent revised entries have shown, an XK end-of-the-world scenario has already been brought about via the unknown actions of SCP-173. Remember that strange reddish-brown substance that we spoke about? Well, in one initial instance, SCP-173 appeared to multiply itself, producing 2 identical copies, resulting in the deaths of 2 D-Class personnel. After being moved to separate cells, a separate multiplication event occurred, creating 4 copies of itself, labeled SCP-173 1 through 4, and the object being reclassified as Keter. Of course, this resulted in a further security breach, as an event like this was unprecedented in the Foundation's history, creating at least 61 copies of itself eventually leading to over 500,000 civilian deaths across North America. This resulted in a mass media panic, with hundreds of thousands of sightings alongside unprecedented pieces of evidence of the Foundation's existence. Major television news outlets had obtained clear video evidence of SCP-173 killing civilians, which led to the media providing instructions for avoiding an instant death. It is commonly theorized that SCP-173 utilizes a hive mind, an intelligence that exponentially scales with the number of nearby copies. After the first copy had been created, the skip was twice as smart, and on and on and on they went. It is believed that the ultimate target was the O5 Council in a presumed takeover plot for domination of the Earth itself. Well, of course, I think I've already said too much, but remember, SCP-173 is a problem that has not been fully dealt with. Imagine a creature that, despite everything, despite uncountable times that it's been destroyed in the most painful and devastating manner, atomic weaponry, hellfire, an entire arsenal of military-grade missiles, the most corrosive chemical compounds known to man, hell, even the cosmic power of love and kindness, none of which eliminate it. Its body is battered and ruined, but yet it refuses to die. Oh, and also, it despises humanity and everything we stand for. Hello, Internet, and welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions, your one-stop shop for everything that incorporates the weird, wonderful world of the SCP Foundation. As always, I'll be your disembodied floating voice, Jack Finch, as we cautiously ask the question, what if SCP-682 was real? As you all may know, we've cultivated quite the relationship with our partners over at the SCP Foundation, and with each and every examination of the archive, we slowly achieve our goal of gently letting the world know the existence of some of the most terrifying anomalous entities under the Foundation's containment. Wait, that wasn't meant to be in my script. I thought we were lying still. Oh well, if you know anything about the SCP Foundation, you'll know that perhaps one of its most iconic entries is that of the hard-to-destroy reptile, the unkillable lizard, SCP-682, a creature of such seething hatred that even SCP-999, the literal living embodiment of joy, has a hard time trying to convince him that he isn't the personification of pain and misery. Spoilers. He is. As the record states, SCP-682 is a large, vaguely reptile-like creature of unknown origin, although it is widely considered that he's one of the Scarlet King's 7 Leviathans, which is bad news all around. The hard-to-destroy reptile appears to be extremely intelligent and has been observed on multiple occasions communicating with other skips, such as 79 during limited periods of exposure. The most worrying component of SCP-682's existence is that it appears to have a hatred of all life, which it erroneously expresses pretty much every time the Foundation and its researchers try to sit it down and speak to it. But what's all the fuss about? Well, SCP-682 has continuously been observed to have extremely high strength, speed, and reflexes, which it demonstrates pretty much every time it's participated in a containment breach, which admittedly is worryingly often. Its body grows and changes at a staggering rate, growing or decreasing in size as it consumes or sheds material. It appears to gain energy from anything that it ingests, be it organic or inorganic. And here lies the system that makes 682 so terrifying. Although it is continuously contained in a vat of acid, it demonstrates the ability to constantly regenerate its dissolving body. 682's regenerative capabilities and resilience are staggering, and the creature has been observed moving and speaking with its body 87% destroyed or rotted. 87%, that's like a foot, a bit of an ankle, an eye, and a few teeth. That's pretty worrying, right? Well, what if a creature of such terrifying magnitude was real? How would we contain such an immovable force? In actual fact, our best bet would be to look at the techniques already employed by the SCP Foundation, and thankfully hope our lucky stars that such a theoretical organization may or may not already exist. It's difficult because our frame of reference is pretty much non-existent. Let's take a look at one of the most dangerous containments on Earth right now. The Elephant's Foot, also known as Chernobyl's hot mess is an extremely radioactive mass of corium formed during the Chernobyl disaster in April 1986. The radiation level near to the mass is approximately 8,000 units of radiation per hour, an unparalleled lethal dosage that is essentially a death sentence just by being close to its vicinity. The only solution that we have for the elephant's foot is, well, better leave it there for a few thousand years while it cools down. And for the most part, that's good enough for us. Don't go near the elephant's foot. Simple. But that's not really the same, is it? The elephant's foot doesn't hate us like 682 does. It just is. It's a thing. It can't move, thankfully. Generally, our tactic as a species has been avoid it if it's dangerous or get enough friends to fight it. The elephant's foot is easy. Don't go there. In the wilderness, it was a different story. Hide up a tree, get enough friends to throw rocks at that lion, and hope that it either dies or runs away. That tactic has pretty much seen us safe and sound for the majority of our species' time on Earth, and still translates to this day. If there's a grizzly bear on the loose, enough people with enough tranquilizers and rifles will sort it out. But here's the problem: SCP-682 can't be tranquilized, and it can't be killed. Out of all of the Foundation's containment, 682 has notched up his fair share of breaches. To date, the hard-to-destroy reptile has attempted to break out on 17 separate occasions, and its successful breaches have numbered at 6. The Foundation's procedure during a breach has been to employ all available mobile task forces to track and eventually recapture it, although no mobile task forces with fewer than 7 members are cleared to engage it because, usually, a lot of them don't survive. Again, remember what I said about hiding up trees and throwing rocks at that lion? Yes, same kind of thing, except instead of throwing rocks, you're throwing your friends at it. So, what does the Foundation do? Well, they contain it in an acid-resistant steel-plated containment chamber filled with hydrochloric acid and hope for the best. Yeah, it hasn't been the most successful course of action, and the Foundation are pretty much sick and tired of the whole deal, but I think I've got a better plan. So, hear me out. I feel like we've got 2 possible scenarios. First up, let's look at the deepest point on the planet. The Kola Super Deep borehole in the Pshensky district of the Kola Peninsula in Russia. Its greatest depth is 12,626 meters or 7.19 miles down. So there we have it. Throw them down the hole, fill the whole thing with hydrochloric acid, seal it up with steel plating, and hope for the best. Eventually he'd get out, but at least we wouldn't have to worry about it for a while. The second possible scenario is perhaps a little more lofty. 682 is a threat to our planet and its people, so why don't we make it the problem of another planet? Let's subdue it in a sealed vat of acid, strap it to a rocket-propelled missile, and send it to the moon. Yeah, it might mean that we wouldn't have a safe base of operations for our lunar colony, but hey, at least we've still got Mars, right? We live in the most connected time that our civilization has ever seen. An age where information is shared almost instantaneously, where you can transfer knowledge, data, even a selfie thousands of miles across the planet with merely the click of a button. You can send it to your mom, you can send it to your best friend, to your classmates, or with enough computing power, every single person on the planet that owns a digital device. You might want to ask yourself, why would everyone on Earth want to see your face? Well, they wouldn't, and everyone would be mildly perturbed, just like when U2 made everyone listen to their album without asking first. But if that selfie was of SCP-096, then it would be a whole different story. Hello Internet, and welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. As always, I'll be your disembodied floating voice, Jack Finch, as we cautiously ask the question, what if SCP-096 was real? Roll the clip. Now, I can't remember that proverb about grandmothers and eggs, but if you know anything about the SCP Foundation, you'll know that 096 is perhaps the poster child of the entire bizarre and anomalous fictional multiverse, and it's safe to say that he, or well, it, has their fair share of equally terrified fans and followers. This guy has been around since the early days of the Foundation, and we've had quite a number of years to ponder what our planet would be like if he was real. Spoilers, it ain't too good. Before we reluctantly lay out that hypothetical apocalyptic scenario, you know the drill by now. Question is, if you're a fan of this video, the SCP Foundation, figuring out bizarre ways that the world will end, or just life's biggest questions in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe bell so you can stay up to date with our latest and greatest uploads. Also, make sure to stick around till the end of the video where I'll be reading out some of your more humorous comments from the past few days. On with the show. First, let's get the formalities out of the way. As the record states, 096 is a humanoid Euclid-class creature measuring approximately 2.38 meters in height. The creature appears to exhibit very little muscle mass, with preliminary analysis of body mass suggesting mild malnutrition. Its arms are grossly out of proportion with the rest of the subject's body, with an approximate length of 1.5 meters each. Spooky. Its skin is mostly devoid of pigmentation, with no sign of any body hair. Nothing too scary about this little twerp, right? Well, the thing that makes 096 the infamous nightmare-inducing creature that it is the fact that whenever someone looks at it, it proceeds to enter a frenzied, unstoppable state of emotional distress and then kills and consumes said person, with a 100% success rate, and nothing can stop it. Literally nothing, not even the strongest and most technologically advanced material known to mankind. The Foundation's only line of containment is to keep it in a windowless steel cube, and they go to great lengths to make sure that no one ever catches a glimpse of the Shy Guy. And this is where our question lies, because we have to make it clear that by glimpse, we mean that 096 is triggered by any physical viewership. It doesn't matter if you see it in person, on a video surveillance screen, or even a photograph of it. It knows when you look at it, and then you die. Eventually, it might take a while to get to you, although it is important to note that the same reaction doesn't occur when viewing artistic depictions, thanks to a brave D-class personnel that managed to scrawl a picture of it before he met his demise. So you're fine viewing this video. Don't worry, 096 won't get you. Yet. But like we said at the beginning of this video, we live in a highly connected era of humanity, and something as simple as a photograph would be easier to spread than chickenpox in the playground. As we've already stated, 96 is a bit of a pain in the arse for the Foundation, and depending on which canon you prescribe to, they may have already killed it, but that's no fun, right? So in this hypothetical scenario, let's imagine that the Foundation has lost containment control of this anomalous entity, and instead it's in the possession of, say, a rogue nation, a group of politically motivated terrorists, doomsday hackers. Wait, what's a doomsday hacker? Because let's put it this way, if SCP-096 was real, it would be the most resourceful and successful means for assassination, and in the wrong hands, it would be the most powerful weapon on the planet, albeit a little messy and incredibly dangerous. But yeah, if those two adjectives aren't synonymous with assassination, then it's no one's business really. It would be the literal equivalent of targeting a city with a missile, just with more death and less explosions. Picture this, you're on the bus downtown minding your own business, when all of a sudden your phone starts buzzing, and then the person's next to you, and then the drivers, and then everyone on the bus and on the street. You open the notification and it's a photograph of SCP-096. Everyone sees the same thing, the whole city exposed to the Shy Guy. And that's the end of that, because as we stated, SCP-096 has a 100% kill rate. If this anomalous entity was real, then the best thing you could do is instantly disconnect yourself from society. Throw your phone in a lake, burn your TV to the ground, never look back, read a book. No pictures though. The threat level of being exposed to a visual image of SCP-96 would be too damn high in our current model of society and technological interaction. It would work its way through the system like a virus, but instead of just an annoying barrage of pop-up ads for mail-order brides or penis enhancement pills, it would be the last image you would ever see. The Shy Guy, front and center on the global stage, the headline act. It would be enough to completely shut down the internet, with the ultimate goal of saving humanity from itself. Sometimes a blue link should stay a blue link and never a purple link. Sometimes a dead meme should stay a dead meme.
26 metal children all stood in a circle looking outwards. It is vital that the statues remain submerged in water. Whatever happens, you do not want the statues to start moving or for the water to drain. If that happens, well, you'd better hope that there is a member of the Foundation around to initiate Protocol Tempest. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today I'm asking, what if SCP-1451 was real? Before we get into this video, I want to ask you guys what the weirdest thing you have ever found underwater is, or the weirdest thing you've ever seen washed up on a beach. I think for me, the worst is just freaky seaweed, but I am creeped out by seaweed. I know a few of you though do have some crazy stories, so I'm absolutely all ears in the comment section. Also, while you're down there, please do leave a thumbs up on this video and share it with a friend. Also, stick around to the end of the video where I'll be reading comments from a previous one. So SCP-1451 is one of the lesser known SCPs in the Foundation. It is a circle of 26 metal children varying in in height between 1.32 and 1.43 meters. The children are all holding hands and facing outwards in the formation. Most of the time the formation is still, but they can begin to show signs of activity by raising their hands and emitting bubbles from their mouths. When an object weighing more than 40 grams enters their circle, the SCP break the circle and destroy the item, using martial arts and pressure points as a team. Creepy children statue teamwork. It seems once the object has been eliminated, the SCP returns to its original formation. The SCP is classed as Euclid, which means its behavior can't be accurately predicted. Side note, there is a great guide to the SCP Foundation by Redditor TastyOrange112 that I want to show you guys now, just because we do a lot of SCP Foundation videos. As you can see, Keter is not looking so good, and Euclid, what is happening? We just don't know, which actually kinda makes it scarier. It's unpredictable. The unpredictability of this SCP not only makes it hard for the SCP Foundation to predict it, but also for us humble folk here at Life's Biggest Questions to talk about it, but here goes. Firstly, it sounds like anything that weighs more than a garlic bulb is at risk of total and complete destruction by the circle, which means it needs to be guarded from afar. Concerningly, the Foundation suggests that the SCP isn't a one-time only deal. There may be others out there. In fact, let me read you a quick excerpt from the Foundation notes. Many instances of SCP-1451 remain at large in the ocean, and it's important to note that, so far, only a small minority of SCP-1451 have actually been captured and logged. It is important that the Foundation secure as many instances of SCP-1451 as possible to maintain public safety and normalcy. However, the species itself appears to be extremely rare. The only areas where incidences of SCP-1451 have been located and captured are the following: the Bermuda Triangle, the Caribbean Sea, and the Indian Ocean. Okay, so for me, this raises a few flags. Perhaps there is indeed an SCP-1451 lurking near the Bermuda Triangle, and the reason why so many strange occurrences have happened in that area is because of it, and moreover, why so many vessels have disappeared without a trace. Could it be because they were destroyed at the hand of SCP-1451? Also, note the lack of recent years Bermuda Triangle disappearances. Does that mean that this particular SCP down there has now been captured? Is the Bermuda Triangle safe again? Also, could this be what happened to Flight MH370 after all? The plane went down in the Indian Ocean, but it's never been found. Isn't that weird? If it were real and there were others out there, wouldn't that be like a pretty big incentive to stay out of the ocean forever? I would absolutely not be taking a trip to Mexico's Museo Subaquático de Arte, an underwater sculpture park with 500 statues. Underwater statues, bad. Cause like, why risk it? Wouldn't we all basically be alright if we just stuck to the shore and bodies of water that we could see to the bottom of? No surprise child circle of death in this pool? Cool, I guess I'll go for a dip. Can't see the bottom? Oh hell no. I'll just stay out of the water. Simple. But like, what if they can attract things into the circle? The SCP Foundation notes seem to suggest as much, so maybe we'll be swimming over one and it'll just get sucked down to the murky depths. Uh-oh. But is it so simple? While we may all be alright avoiding dark murky depths and statue circles, the fact that this SCP exists is a problem. The fact that all SCPs exist in this reality would be a problem too. While this variant is Euclid, there are plenty of other Keter-class beasties that we should be worried about, although that is a wider question of what would we do if the whole SCP Foundation was real. For now, let's just circle back to 1451. There'd be a lot of questions which would need to be answered. Why are they all metal children? Are they living entities? They sometimes produce oxygen bubbles, so that must mean that they're breathing. What do they want? Why do they have to destroy objects larger than 40 grams that enter their circle? And what happens to that object or entity when it's destroyed? They leave it with no trace, so where does it go? Do they eat it? Do they send it to some kind of other parallel dimension? If so, where is it? What's going on? What I'm getting at here is that we would need more information on SCP-1451 if it were real. We simply don't know enough about what it is, why it is, and what it wants. If it were real, I guess the majority of us would know nothing about it, it'd be kept under wraps. But the Foundation would be working away in the background to solve some of the world's biggest mysteries. And hey, who's to say the SCP isn't real for sure? The ocean is a deep dark place, a deep dark and largely unexplored place. We've explored more of outer space than we have our own ocean, so maybe, just maybe, there is a secret menace lurking, and maybe it's worse than SCP-1451.